For example, when we're talking about women's rights the other day in class, right? This is what a lot of people think of with women's rights. Like, they're forced to wear things covering their arms, legs, their body. But we still have these issues in the U.S., not to this extent, okay? So, the first text is called Reading Lolita in Tehran. So, this is actually an excerpt from a book. So, you know how we read A Farewell to Manzanar, and we just read a short portion of it? Same thing. Do you guys know Johnny, actually? The bookery in downtown Placerville? They have this book. So, if you were interested in this, they have it for like $5. I saw it the other day. All right. So we're going to go ahead and actually we're going to read the backgrounds of these authors. Okay, so the first story we're reading, her name is Azar Nafisi. She was born in 1947. An Iranian, she taught English literature in Tehran from 1979 until 1995. The laws passed after the revolution made Nafisi's job difficult. University faculty scrutinized novels that Nafisi taught, and Nafisi was chastised for not wearing a veil. In 1995, Nafisi left the university and began teaching a small group of women in her home where they were free to discuss books, like Lolita, that were considered unacceptable by Iranian authorities. In 1997, she left Iran for the U.S., where she now teaches. Okay? The second story that we're going to read, which is the graphic novel, the author is Marjane Satrapi, born 1969, was born in Iran after the revolution. Satrapi's parents sent her to Europe to attend school. Later, she studied illustration and learned to create comics. Persepolis 1 tells the story of her childhood in Iran. Okay, so it's a two-story process. The one we're reading is called Persepolis 2. So the graphic novel before the one we're reading was based on her growing up, and Persepolis 2, which we are reading, tells the story of her adolescence in Europe and Iran, of her struggle to fit in. Both books were made into the animated movie Persepolis, which won many awards. Satrapi has written other graphic novels, including Chicken with Plums. She lives in Paris with her husband. Okay? So, here's the excerpt from the memoir, Reading Lolita in Tehran. Okay? So, let's go ahead and focus, and I'll ask questions as we go.
From Reading Lolita in Tehran. Memoir by Azar Nafisi. How can I create this other world outside the room? I have no choice but to appeal once again to your imagination. Let's imagine one of the girls, say Sanaz, leaving my house, and let us follow her from there to her final destination. She says her goodbyes and puts on her black robe and scarf over her orange shirt and jeans, coiling her scarf around her neck to cover her huge gold earrings. She directs wayward strands of hair under the scarf, puts her notes into her large bag, straps it on over her shoulder, and walks out into the hall. She pauses a moment on top of the stairs to put on thin, lacy black gloves to hide her nail polish. We follow Sanaz down the stairs, out the door, and into the street.
Okay, so how does she kind of give you detail on what's happening in that first paragraph? There's a lot of detail, but there's no images. How does she provide detail? Aiden? Yeah, so you can see the image, right? Even though there's no graphics, like we're going to read in the next story, this is very descriptive of how she's dressing. Okay?
To the street. You might notice that her gait and her gestures have changed. It is in her best interest not to be seen, not be heard, or noticed. She doesn't walk upright, but bends her head towards the ground and doesn't look at passers-by. She walks quickly and with a sense of determination. The streets of Tehran and other Iranian cities are patrolled by militia, who ride in white Toyota patrols, 4 gun-carrying men and women, sometimes followed by a minibus. They are called the Blood of God. They patrol the streets to make sure that women like Sanaz wear their veils properly, do not wear makeup, do not walk in public with men who are not their fathers, brothers, or husbands. She will pass slogans on the walls, quotations from Khomeini and a group called the Party of God. Men who wear ties are U.S. lackeys. Veiling is a woman's protection. Beside the slogan is a charcoal drawing of a woman, Her face is featureless and framed by a dark chudder. My sister, guard your veil. My brother, guard your eyes.
Alright, so someone describe that scene, which is not nice. What's going on? Besides Aiden. Johnny, what's going on?
She doesn't want to get caught, like, doing things that will should be against the law in Iran.
Okay. She doesn't want to, and she's describing what it's like, right? Go to the very beginning of her paragraph, and she says, we follow Sanaz down the stairs, out the door, and into the street. Now, check how she does this. You might notice that her gait and her gestures have changed. It is in her best interest not to be seen, not be heard or noticed. She doesn't walk upright, but bends her head towards the ground and doesn't look at passerby. She walks quickly and with a sense of determination. Okay? So, think of the wife as it's her memoir, right? Like, she's saying we and I, and then all of a sudden, it's no longer first-person point of view. Now she's talking about, we see her. Why do you think she would do that? Oh, hello, Mr. Winger. What do you have?
My name's Wendell.
Sweet. I don't really hear that now. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Why would she do that as the author? Ava, Angus.
Why would she talk like that?
Yeah, because she look in the first body paragraph. She uses I and she in its first person point of view. And then when describing Sanaz, she all of a sudden goes into second person. And it's like kind of an outward person saying, she is doing this. What would be the point of changing the point of view?
Because, like, for one, you're, like, less engaged. Like, you're just kind of, like, less engaged in the scene. And for the other, she's making you, like, a part of the scene. Like, you're following her. Like, you're at this adventure with her. It makes you, like, feel more things. You can actually imagine it happening to you.
Yes.
Not just
Good. And then also, Johnny, headphones on.
It's not funny.
Okay, so then the other thing is when she's all of a sudden saying I this, we this, and then no longer is associated with it, it's kind of detaching her point of view from the topic, right? She's saying, I don't agree with this. So she's kind of pointing that out to say this is ridiculous. All right, Nate, you shouldn't be on the computer at all because your book is next to you.
Mm.
So close your computer or turn it around. Okay, so okay, so I want you to, if you're going to come to class, you need to stay with me. Okay? No. I want you to get it, and then you can go ahead.
Eyes. If she gets on a bus, the seating is segregated. She must enter through the rear door and sit in the back seats allocated to women. Yet in taxis, which accept as many as 5 passengers, men and women are squeezed together like sardines, as the saying goes. And the saying goes with minibuses, where so many of my students complain of being harassed by bearded and God-fearing men. You might well ask, what is Sanaz thinking as she walks the streets of Tehran? How much does this experience affect her? Most probably she tries to distance her mind as much as possible from her surroundings. Perhaps she is thinking of her brother, or of her distant boyfriend and the time when she will meet him in Turkey. Does she compare her own situation with her mother's when she was the same age? Is she angry that women of her mother's generation could walk the streets freely, enjoy the company of the opposite sex, join the police force, become pilots, live under laws that were among the most progressive in the world regarding women? Does she feel humiliated by the new laws, by the fact that after the revolution the age of marriage was lowered from 18 to 9? That stoning became once more the punishment for adultery and prostitution? In the course of nearly 2 decades, the streets have been turned into a war zone, where young women who disobey the rules are hurled into patrol cars, taken to jail, flogged, fined, forced to wash the toilets and humiliated, and as soon as they leave, they go back and do the same thing. Is she aware, Sanas, of her own power? Does she realize how dangerous she can be when her every stray gesture is a disturbance to public safety? Does she think how vulnerable the Revolutionary Guards are, who, for over 18 years, have patrolled the streets of Tehran and have had to endure young women like herself, and those of other generations, walking, talking, showing a strand of hair, just to remind them that they have not converted? We have reached Sanaz's house, where we will leave her on her doorstep, perhaps to confront her brother on the other side, and to think in her heart of her boyfriend. These girls, my girls, had both a real history and a fabricated one. Although they came from very different backgrounds, the regime that ruled them had tried to make their personal identities and histories irrelevant. They were never free of the regime's definition of them as Muslim women.
Okay, so disturbing a little bit. Okay, so in her memoir, she's describing the instances of her feelings, right, in the situation and how upset she is with it. And then she gives a lot of rhetorical questions, right? What's a rhetorical question?
A question that is, you're not actually asking a question.
Yes.
It's like, you're not asking a question, it's like a big question.
Yes. So when we're talking about rhetorical devices, right, and how to kind of like achieve your argument, she is really effective with rhetorical questions. She's like, does she understand her power? Does she realize how dangerous she is? Does she think how vulnerable the Revolutionary Guards are, who, for over 18 years, have patrolled the streets and had to endure young women like herself, walking, talking a strand of hair just to remind them that they have not converted? Okay? This society made...
Sorry.
So I already gave you one warning, so that's fine now. So when it comes to oppression, this society is extremely, extremely oppressive of women. Isn't it interesting, like, from what you guys know of the Middle East and of Iran, isn't that not how you think it always has been? Like, it's just kind of always been like that. It wasn't until the 70s that that group came into power. Before that, it wasn't like that. And she even talks about the frustrations of that. All right. So now you are going to read the graphic novel Persepolis. So if you just scroll down, okay? This is the graphic novel. It's called From Persepolis to the Story of a Return. Okay? So, I'll go up here. Anyone confused on what a graphic novel is? You guys probably learned a lot of these in middle school.
It's a glorified comic book.
Basically. Okay? So, first comic, we confronted the regime as best we could. Okay? Now you have a group over here. It says, in 1990, the era of grand revolutionary ideas and demonstrations was over. Between 1980 and 1983, the government had imprisoned and executed so many high school and college students that we no longer dared to talk politics. Okay? So, I need to do that first one. So in that comment, she's explaining how they no longer can even talk politics because they just tortured, killed, and threw out anyone who questioned their authority. Alright, so scroll down. Our struggle was more discreet. This is about women in particular. It hinged on the little details. To our leaders, the smallest thing could be a subject of subversion. Okay? Do you know what subversion means? Subversion is kind of when you're a subordinate and you step out of line. Okay? So, showing your wrist, that was not okay. A loud laugh, okay, so I would for sure be in trouble. Having a Walkman, Johnny would for sure be in trouble. In short, everything was a pretext to arrest us. I even remember spending an entire day at the committee because of a pair of red socks. Okay? The regime had understood that one person leaving her house while asking herself, are my trousers long enough? Is my veil in place? Can my makeup be seen? Are they going to whip me? No longer asks herself, where is my freedom of thought? Where is my freedom of speech? My life, is it livable? What's going on in the political prisons? It's only natural. When we're afraid, we lose all sense of analysis and reflection. Our fear paralyzes us. Besides, fear has always been the driving force behind all dictators' repression. Showing your hair or putting on makeup logically became acts of rebellion. Okay, so Johnny, hold up. What is the author trying to get across in this graphic novel? Johnny?
That women are allowed to do certain things.
She's kind of, and do you guys see here? She's calling out the regime, right? It's not about the veil or the trousers. What is it about? Freedom. Yes, to question authority. Okay? How many times have I told you guys, we critically think so that as adults, you can critically think. You can question who's in power. You can question authority. You can question whether things in the world are right. If you're being oppressed like these women are, you don't care about that stuff. You care about surviving the daily things, like, is my wrist showing? Does that make sense? Yes, no? Okay. So, your assignments include, so let's do a discussion board first. So it asks, how is the way the authors communicate with readers similar and different in the text? Support your ideas with quotes from both texts. Okay? So, you need to have at least a response of 100 words. Okay? So, how is the way they communicate with readers similar and different? First question. 2 says support your ideas with quotes from both texts. Okay? So that is your first assignment. Faith, you're on the second one. You're there, yeah, hun. So go back. And make sure you reply to 2 others in at least 50 words. Okay? Do you need your phone to touch them on? Yeah. Okay, so from here. I know. Instead of getting in trouble, what would be the appropriate thing? Pass. Yes. Okay, so you're going to text her and they're going to give it back to me. You said this before, I'm pretty chill. Okay, so this is the next assignment, so just stay with me while I explain. Authors strive to make effective choices for meaning or style. In her memoir, Reading Lolita in Tehran, author Azar Nafisi constantly uses rhetorical questions to engage the audience and to make a point. We talked about that, right, in that section? That's her, major rhetorical device is asking questions. Rhetorical questions are questions that do not require or expect an answer. Depending on the context, they're often used for dramatic effect. Okay? So usually, the audience knows the answers, and you just ask a rhetorical question to kind of get them to think of that. So, read the following sentence. Does she realize how dangerous she can be when her every stray gesture is a disturbance to public safety? Nafisi could instead have written the sentence this way. She is dangerous because her every stray gesture is a disturbance to public safety. Why would Nafisi use a rhetorical question rather than a simple sentence? What was the point? I don't want your answers, I want you to respond. Okay? So what was the point, why was it effective to use rhetorical questions instead of just stating a sentence? Okay? That's what you're answering.